Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So this is my series called Work in Progress Wednesdays, and I'm working through an entire project from start to finish during this series. And this is series 1, and we are now on episode 7. And what I'm doing this week is working on the border on this quilt. It is an antique inspired quilt. It is featuring the Dresden plate pattern. And I've been having a lot of fun. I've just been kind of working through this and just kind of deciding what direction to go as I work. And you can see here I kind of did a piano key border, and then in the corners I did kind of a quarter of the Dresden plate to set the corners apart from the piano key layout. So I'm going to show you how I put this border together. It is not attached onto the main part of the quilt yet. I still need to do that. But yeah, it was pretty. This was probably one of the easier parts of the quilt because you're just sewing strips together. And I've already done the Dresden plate before. I already had the blades ready. They were left over from previous work. So it was really easy to get the border on. I'm excited to sew those strips on and really feel like I'm done with the quilt, even though you're not. When you get the top finished, you feel so accomplished. At least I do. I'm like, oh, I'm done. And I have so many quilt tops laying around that need to be quilted because the funnest part is piecing it for me. How about for you? Let me know in the comments what your favorite part of the whole quilt process is. But so I'm going to get these border pieces sewn on. What I'll do is sew the sides on first, see how it's measuring up, and then I'll be attaching these corners to the top and then sew them down onto the rest of the quilt. So this part should be pretty quick. I'm going to put a lot of pins in to try to prevent stretching. And what I will usually do with borders like this, because if it does end up being too long, these strips go past, I'll usually pin in the middle, find the middle of both and work my pins out and see, so that if I do need to trim off to match up my quilt, each of the end strips are going to be pretty even, so I don't end up with one that has like a little sliver and one that has the whole strip. So hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes I like to ramble and I'm just kind of in that mood today. All right, so I'm going to show you how I put the borders together. It was really easy. I'm going to get these attached on, and then I'll show you what it looks like. I'll finish pretty much like this, but I'll try to get some good photos of it outside if the weather holds up. It's supposed to storm really bad today again, so we'll see. Okay, I'm going to show you how I put this together. Okay, so for the border of this quilt, I'm going to make some kind of like corner blocks for the border that mimic the Dresden in the center. So it's kind of like I'm making one Dresden and cutting it into quarters, into 4 pieces. So my border I'm making is going to be about 5 inches. I'm going to make the blocks 5.5 inches because I want it to have a finished look of 5 inches. So some of it's going to be in the seam and some of it's going to be in the binding. So I'm going to make the corners 5-inch squares. So I'm just going to square up my fabric here. It's kind of amazing how often you square up these fabric pieces that you have the yardage, and each time you lay it back out, it's like, did I really ever square it up? Because it's all kind of wonky again. Oh, I almost cut it at 5 inches. That would have changed the size of my entire thing because I would have just kept it that way. All right, so I'm going to cut that strip, and then I'm just going to cut off 4 of the corners blocks because I don't need a strip this long, but I'm going to save it and use it later. I'm going to just cut them off one at a time because why not? Because I don't have to cut very many, just 4. So I'm going to line it back up on a line and square up this side and cut the 4 blocks. So I don't have a lot more to do on this quilt. I do need to write up the pattern, just need to find time on that. I've been making a bunch of other things because I've been feeling so inspired and have all these ideas in my head, and I never have time to do all of them. It's so unfortunate. Like, if you just had all the time in the world, just think of all the stuff that you have planned that you want to get done that you can actually get done. But unfortunately, we don't have all the time in the world. One of these I'm bound to cut at 5 instead of 5.5. I almost cut it at 6. I cannot talk and cut. Like, some things you just have to concentrate on, and measuring quilt blocks is something I have to concentrate on. Okay, so I have the 4. So basically what we're going to do is the same thing we did with the larger Dresden blocks, just this time it's just going to be in the corner. So I'm going to sew sets of 5 of these blades together, and they're going to be along the corner afterward. And then I took my template from before for the circle and cut it into a quarter. And so I'm just going to cut 2 yellow and 2 orange, just kind of like these quarter circles. And I'm just going to fold over one edge because the rest will all be in seams, and that's just going to go along there. And I'm going to just applique them all in place. I'm not going to show all that because I have before. It's just the same thing, just in the corner. I'm just going to baste all the pieces in place and sew them. So simple, simple. I'm going to do 4 of those for the corners, and that will be those. And then for the piano border, I do have that honey bun that I might use. I noticed that, here, let me grab it real quick. So using this would be so much easier because it is already cut down to the size that I want to use. However, there's a lot of colors in here that I have not used in the quilt, like these green patterns. Some of the blues are all very similar, but some of them are not the same prints I've used. I want this to be kind of a scrappy looking quilt, but a lot of the prints aren't already in it, and I'm already using so many different prints. So I'm going to see if I have enough of my fat quarters left over to finish the border. I'll be able to do the math and figure it out after, because I know the size of the quilt as it is now. It's 44 inches by 56. So on each side, since I'm doing 1.5 inch strips, each side is going to need 56 strips, and the top and bottom are each going to need 44. So after I get these cut, I'll be able to figure out if I have enough from this. If not, I'll open up the honey bun and pull some out to add to it. So essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to cut all these fabrics into 1.5 inch strips. So I'll cut my strips. It's a little bit wonky, so I may need to square this up. I was hoping it would be straight. Maybe it's the other side I was cutting, but stuff just gets off. And I think when we're cutting strips, we don't realize how off it is sometimes until we really lay it back out and see. So sometimes it's important to check with your cuts to make sure that you're still lined up good. So I'm going to be cutting these. Good grief, I'm going to need to change out my blade soon. I cut so much that it just can get off. So typically I would do the same. I would cut the same one and get all my strips, but I kind of want to show you what I'm going to be doing here. So this one looks maybe pretty good. So I'm going to be cutting all these strips. Good grief. I have blades. I just need to switch this out. So I'm going to sew a bunch of these strips together. So I'm going to keep adding on to it. keep getting a variety of these and sewing them together. So once I get maybe, you know, 5 to 10 strips that I could sew together, I'll sew them all, press the seams either open or to one side. And then once I get them all sewn, what I'll do is square up one of the sides and then measure 5.5 inches and cut there. And then I can keep adding these 5.5 inch segments together until I get to the, what did I say the measurements were? I have them written down. Till I get to 56 inches long and 54. So I'll keep adding those segments next to each other until I get the length I need for the tops and the sides. Just, I think strip piecing it like this and then cutting the 5.5 inch segments and sewing those together will be a lot quicker than cutting 5.5 inch long strips, 5.5 inch long, and piecing each strip together one at a time. Doing it this way will make it a lot quicker. So I'm going to get all these strips cut and I'll start sewing them together, see how much I think I can get from these, and if there's not enough, I'll start adding in some of the strips here. Okay, I'm still working on cutting all these strips, but I just want to show you why it's so important to change your blade regularly. Look at that. I took the time to clean it and change out the blade. Cleaning the rotary cutter, meaning there was like a lot of lint that builds up inside of all those crevices. So I cleaned it all out and changed the blade, and oh my goodness, it makes a world of difference. And I'm still trying to apply as much pressure as I did before as I cut these strips, and you just don't need to if you take the time to clean or change your blade when you need to. So I know I don't like changing it because it's just more money because, you know, the blades aren't cheap either, but it makes a world of difference. And because I don't have to go over the fabric multiple times to cut it, I don't get as much fraying. It's just so much better if you just change it out every once in a while. Okay, so I have all of my strips cut, and each strip is going to get me 3 5.5 inch segments. I am able to get 141 of those little 5.5 inch segments from all of these strips, but I need 200. So I'm still gonna need some more, about 59 more, not full strips, but strips strips that will get me 3 segments. So I know my way of doing this stuff is kind of it makes sense to me. I'm trying to make it make sense, but I'm gonna need a few more of these strips. So I'm gonna open this up and kind of decide which colors I want to go with. I think I'm okay with you know, grabbing a few that have a lot of the same colors in it. Like this one will pull some of the oranges from here and some of the oranges from there, so I don't think it'll stand out too much. And what I'll do is cut these in half so they'll match up with these. So I need 59 more of those little strips, and if I cut this in half to match up to the size of this, I'll be able to get 6 from this. So that's how I'm going to figure it out, how many I need. I definitely am not going to use the solids because all of mine are patterned in here. So I'm going to take the solids out and just kind of see what makes sense. This kind of plays off of the kind of southwestern feel of this one, so I think it'll make sense. I already had this color in here, so I'm only going to pull that one if I need it. I don't really have a whole lot of greens in there. There are blues. I already have this one in here and this one. I have this print, but not the blue. So I like that. Same with that one. We do have that already in that blue. I like that one. So I'm gonna go through and then I'll figure out how many I have, which prints I should for sure keep that I've pulled, and just figure out which ones I'm going to use and which ones I'm not. So let's see what we got. Okay, so since I needed 59 more little 5.5 inch segments, and I'm able to get 6 from each of these strips, I needed about 10 strips. So I picked out the ones that I'm going to use. And what I'll do is I'm just gonna snip them all in half if I can. And put them here with my pile. And what I'll be doing is just sewing them together in strips. Just kind of lay them out and see what I think works well together and sew them together. Probably groups of, 5 or 6. I don't want to get them too long because I want to be able to sort them out nicely and make my border strips. So this one might be too dark, but it does have a lot of the lighter colors in there, so it'll probably work out fine. I'm so excited to get this border put together because I'm so close to the finish line of the quilt. I'm excited to get it on and see how it looks finalized and baste it all together and then start quilting it. Okay, so I have a bunch of the strips sewn together and I have them sewn in like different combinations. So this one has 16 and then I have some that have 8 and 4. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to be cutting these down into the 5.5 inch strips. So the first thing I'm going to do is square up one of the sides. So I'm just going to square it up so it's nice and even. And then I'm going to cut it at 5.5 inches. And I should hopefully, if my math was right, be able to get 3 out of each of these. So there's 1. 2. And So what I'll be doing is just mix and matching all the sets that I have and sewing them together like this to get the length that I need for the sides and the top and bottom of the quilt. So I'm gonna get all these sections cut, just square them up. So get a nice straight edge here. I'm at 5.5. Oh my goodness. Wouldn't that be awful to cut one of these whole strip sets at the wrong length or width, I guess. So I just think it's so much faster sewing all these strips together first and then cutting them all together. But if you want to cut each, you know, strip to the size, the 5.5 inches, and sew them all together because that's how it's easier for you to work, go ahead and do that, because, you know, everybody is going to, you know, the way their mind works is gonna make it different on how we want to sew and how we want to work on things like this. So I'm just going to keep cutting these, and then like I said, I'm going to sew them together so that they fit the length and width of my quilt. Okay, so I have all of the quarter plates, I guess we'll call them, basted in place. And you might have some overhang from either the blades or the center circles. So I'm just going to line up from the back and trim any excess off. I'm just going to go ahead and do it now because it'll just make it easier for me to have everything nice and even when I go to sit down and applique all these. So I have all 4 of them finished and basted in place. So hopefully, since I just have these to do, I can get these together pretty quickly and work on the piano keys. They're so cute. I kind of think it would be fun just to do a quilt with just these little quarter segments. Have like the basting spray on these because they're kind of sticky. This one didn't have a lot of overhang. So there we go. You just gotta sew those together. Wouldn't that be cute? You'd end up having a center circle with different colors. Anyhow, so there are those 4. Thank you so much for watching this video. I had so much fun making this quilt top, and I am so ecstatic with how it turned out. Now, next week, what I'll be doing is showing you how I like to baste my quilt tops. And then after that, I'll be showing you how I am deciding to hand quilt this quilt. If you have any ideas on that, please let me know. Thanks for watching. Bye.